tell me how you guys all came together. So what is the unifying force behind these powerhouse of men and women of purpose, of business, of faith? So why don't you guys start with telling me about what brought you all together?
I guess it's the author's journey.
Yes, the author's journey.
The author's
book.
journey.
Yeah. So the publisher is Ilona Washington,
Okay.
and some of us worked on book one, which was
Triumph
in the Trenches.
Let's hold this
Navigating
up.
Success for Black Professionals, and then volume two is it's called volume two.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that it's turning out to be a trilogy, and this is the second book. So there's another one coming. So this is how we initially met.
Yes, but I think the book is really just indicative of a larger purpose.
Yes.
Because when we spend time together talking, we realize that we not only have many things in common, we realize that we've literally been put together to be as biblical as possible, to be put together for such a time as this. Because we began writing the Triumph series sort of before America began to evolve into its dire need of not just this book, but of us as a team.
Yes.
And I think the word that I often say that binds us together is trauma, but not in a negative sense.
Yes.
Right? So as I've said, we have not bonded by a weird interdependency. What we've bonded over is wellness, is the fact that the one theme that runs through all of us is that we are healed people or on a journey of healing.
Yes.
And we are extending healing to people on the outside. And we formulate a group. Lastly, I'm going to say the thing that struck me the most when we first got together and we were on that Zoom or that virtual interaction group that we had was that we were from different parts of the world.
Yes.
That we were not all from this nation, but we were from different parts of the world, different walks of life, and yet we all had experiences that were deeply connected. So we understood trauma from the inside, where we had all, in our work experience, in our journey upward in our career, had experienced the things that we were writing about. So we were experts who had come together. And this is the thing that's most important, is that people on the outside of the African diaspora frequently like to tell us that it's all in our minds.
Yes.
But the greatest power of this group is our ability to say we are an army, letting you understand that this trauma does happen in the workplace.
Yes.
And that we have not only survived the trauma, but we thrive.
Yes.
And we are able as a body to tell you how to walk out of it and how to walk out of it well.
Absolutely.
Dr. Carrie and I are both in the Courageous Pursuit of Authenticity book. Right? Hold it up.
Yes. Hold it up. Yes.
And so that's what I spoke about that in my chapter in there, because I was saying how there becomes a time in the organization, the machine, right, where show up as your authentic self becomes a microaggression.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So they say, we want you to show up. Come show up, be your authentic self.
Yes.
Or they weaponize it and say, I don't think that you're being authentic with me right now. And so for me, and in my chapter, it's like, so what's going on? And, and so in my chapter, it was about my authenticity belongs to me.
Yes.
Now I will show up as my professional authentic self, and I will do my job, and I will do what's required of me, and I will get my paycheck. But my personal authenticity belongs to the people I love. It belongs to the people who have earned that right for me to share that with them. So everyone does not have or should not have access to your personal authenticity.
Yes.
That needs to be earned.
And that's the courageous pursuit of authenticity that we kind of talk about. Even though Philip, well, you weren't part of this.
No, I wasn't part of that.
But once again, an example. of, constantly getting feedback, which really wasn't feedback,
Yes.
in reviews, saying, you need to be more approachable.
Yeah.
Or, how you be so aggressive.
That's my
Yes, aggressive.
People will make you think something is really wrong with you. And I mean,
Yes.
you need to do some self-reflection.
Yes.
I have more self-reflective journals. And I found myself, and this is what I kind of talk about, is I found myself in my early career just like transforming into something.
Yes.
And I was like, this is not who you are.
Yeah.
So when I speak about my authenticity, it was actually finding my real self and saying, no, I'm not being aggressive. Unfortunately for you, that's how you're receiving it.
Right.
Yes.
And I am approachable because I don't have some invisible force field around me. That I said, so I no longer will ascribe to the labels that you put there that are not quantitative.
Right.
Now, if you tell me that, X amount of my students aren't, doing their work, or X amount of my suspensions or expulsions or increasing, why is that? If you can quantify something, but they couldn't quantify it because all of those numbers were obsolete when it came to me and my students.
Oh, wow.
So now you have to just find some feedback.
Yes.
So now the feedback is about how colleagues feel.
Right.
Now, I signed up to be a middle school teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
They already been to middle school. So it's really, if you're not getting complaints from the students and their parents, well, what are we talking about?
Welcome to Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice. Today, I am so excited about this phenomenal group that we have today on our podcast. In this empowering episode of Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice, we're bringing the faithful and purpose-driven together. Men and women walking boldly in business, faith, and divine purpose. This rich and real conversation explores how aligning your work with God's will impacts every part of your being, mental, physical, and spiritual. From corporate spaces to entrepreneurial ventures, you'll hear stories of how calling meets capacity. Faith fuels focus, and wellness becomes a way of life, not just a goal. So welcome to Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You are welcome. So let's begin by having each of you briefly introduce yourself and share your current work or ministry and how your faith shapes the way you lead and serve.
Okay, I guess I'll start.
Yes.
I am Dr. Carrie Young McWilliams, better known as Dr. Carrie. I am the CEO of Young McWilliams Educational Services.
Yes.
I am a retired, seasoned career educator.
Amen.
So now I've taken that and in service still to students and families. Am a family and child advocate for students who are in foster care, whose parents are not able to advocate for them. And I work with those students who have specialized educational services and 504s. I also am the co-founder of Empowered Ed services with Young and Horner, and that is an anti-racism outfit that we have that we started last year. Our co-worker and I left a nonprofit when we found that it was mostly profiting off the murder of George Floyd, but they weren't really vested in doing the work and educating people around anti-Blackness and anti-racism. So we started Empowering Solutions by Young and Horner to work with other nonprofits and to work with educational systems or really any organization that really wants to update their policies, procedures, and update their cultures. Also, I have care2empower.org. That is my website and my other business where I bring all the things together along with our books that we'll be talking about later in your show.
Yes, I love it. Go ahead, Dr. Carrie. Y'all see what I'm talking about, right? All right. Next.
Well, I'm Dr. Sharon Smith Sanchez, And I consider myself primarily a servant leader
Yes.
as a result of the fact that at 12 years old, um, I gave my life to the master of the universe
Yes.
and committed myself to whatever it was he called me to.
Yes.
And so as a result of that, everything I do is centered on community, loving community in his name. That's it. So if you ask me to come out and I feel led to, I will sweep your house.
Yes.
Whatever it is I'm called to do is what I'm going to do in that hour.
Yes.
What do I do on a day-to-day basis? Anthologist and keynote, which is in part what's got me here.
Yes.
I'm part of a group of 22 amazing people. I've written before Talawa Turf, celebrating victory over child sex abuse.
Yes.
I work predominantly helping people to overcome trauma. So in doing that, I work as higher ed faculty. My full-time gig is as a professor at Malone University. My part-time gig is as a professor at the City University of New York. Yes, I'm Jamaican.
Yes,
So
Jamaica.
we have plenty jobs. That's the big joke. I am clergy, and I am part of a ministry called Global Impact Ministries, where instead of setting up our shingle and having our 5 cousins in the church, what we do is we provide a space for other clergy to come worship. We do a lot of what we do virtually. We invite other clergy to come worship and get healed, most importantly,
Yes. Amen.
so that they can heal other people. I have a consultation company called Talawa Turf International, which has been my baby since 1997. We provide grant writing, coaching services.
Wow.
To educational and social service entities and secular and non-secular entities throughout the world.
Wow.
And so I have an amazing staff of people who do that. And what's prepared me to be able to do that is that I'm coming from a life, having lived a life in government, working as an assistant commissioner responsible for the development of children and adults throughout the city and state of New York.
Wow.
And lastly, board membership, where I'm on the board of the Police Athletic League and Program Management Global Institute.
Yes. All right. Wow.
Sounds like you're busy.
Just a little bit.
Just a tad.
But I got a calendar in my phone and it kind of tells me where to go.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I understand that.
But hearing you ladies, share your backgrounds, I'm thinking, when do you guys rest? But we'll get to that later.
That's interesting you say that, because that is the primary thing we talk to clergy about, is how to incorporate rest. And that rest is your power.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that.
Yes, we will. All right.
It is part of wellness, right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah. So I'm Phil Woolfolk. I serve as managing director of Main Street Advisory LLC, which is a organization that is a consulting practice that I started back in 2015,
Wow.
primarily to work with companies to help them improve profitability. And now I've transformed that company to be a funding mechanism to
Wow.
work with businesses to help them receive funding that they need to grow and expand their business. I happened to be on the board as the board treasurer during the pandemic, and
Yes.
the state of New Jersey was asking the chamber if they would serve as a resource partner to work with companies to help them through the economic downturn. And so, because I have a background in banking and real estate and financing, I was able to help build the infrastructure to help us be able to do that. So we work with
Wow.
hundreds of companies around the state to help them stay in business, to help them, maintain and some grow and expand their operations during the pandemic. And out of that, the chamber became a client. And then on the other side of the pandemic, the chamber became an employer. And I ended up serving for 3 years as the chief operations officer for the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey.
Yes.
And then I went back to my consulting practice, expanded into starting Philip Speaks LLC, which
Okay.
kind of incorporates the writing and the speaking and collaborating with these brilliant ladies here.
Yes.
And so with that, I do some coaching and also continuing to write. And I guess when you think about your calling, right? When I was probably about 9 or 10 years old, I actually started lending money to my parents' friends.
Wow.
So I would save my money from running errands and shining shoes and
Yes.
doing all this kind of stuff. And so if I lent you $10 on payday, you had to pay me back 15.
Yes.
So I started as a banker way before I actually started working in the bank.
Yes.
You was a money man
So
when you was 15.
I've been a money man for a long time.
I didn't have anything on you.
You know, so that's how I started my pre-banking career. And then we grew up as a low income family, and we had a lot of financial challenges growing up. And I remember saying to my mom when I was little, basically at the curb with all our stuff. That when I got older, I was going to own so many houses, I would never have to worry about being homeless.
Yes.
And so that's how I got involved in the real estate business.
Amen.
Right. So I've been a real estate investor now for over 40 years.
Wow.
And one other quick story that led me to some of what I'm doing now in terms of coaching and working with people to help them improve their family finances. On September 11, 2001, I happened to be in Pentagon City, right across the highway from the Pentagon on the day the terrorists attacked the country. And in that environment, I really decided I wanted to spend more time at home.
Yeah.
And that my corporate climb was a lot less important than family.
Wow.
And so it took me about a year to transition out of my old role. I was actually there for a fair lending conference. At the time, I was vice president and fair lending manager for a multi-billion-dollar bank responsible for fair lending compliance for their 7-state market area. And I decided that was no longer important. So it took me about a year to transition out of that role. I was serving as the chair of the local charter school at the time. When they found that I was leaving the bank, they asked if I would come internally and work for the school. So I served as the chief administrative officer for a charter school for about 16 months. Then after that, I was able to stay home and spend about 5 years golfing and camping and traveling.
Oh, nice.
And enjoy my 2 girls when they were younger.
Good.
And
Amen.
And what led me to what I'm doing now is we had just come back, I think, from Disney World. We had just did golf lessons, and my youngest daughter was in the family room. She had her hands clasped behind her back, her feet up in the recliner. She's looking out in the backyard, and she's just talking to herself. And she says, "This is the life." And I said, "Vanessa, what did you say?" She said, "This is the life. Golfing, camping, traveling, Disney World, swimming with the dolphins. This is the life." And what resonated with me was, wouldn't it be great to have some impact on helping other families get to the point where their children feel like this is the life?
Yes.
A lot of us are not there.
Yes.
But when you look at the $1.8 trillion a year that African Americans put into the economy,
yes,
it's not like we don't have the resources. We just need to reallocate and redeploy what's important to us and how we invest and how we allocate our funds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's me.
Wow. Woo! You know what stands out to me when you were saying, it's so interesting because we don't always realize it when we're young that God is calling us to purpose.
Right.
But when you said, "Oh yeah, I started my banking career at 8 or 9 years old," and yes, you did, because that was God calling you to purpose.
Right.
And then to look at your life and your legacy in over 40 years to see how he called you then, and now maybe you can look back now and say, "Yeah, I was called at 8 or 9 because I was lending people money and they had to pay back double the interest." No, I'm joking. But yeah, that's a blessing. Thank you so much.
Well, closing out the circle. Hi, everyone at home. I am Reverend Dr. Senior Barnes. The Reverend is for me. The Doctor is for you.
Yes.
Just like my beautiful sisters here, I am a queen of many hats. So I am not only am I in clergy, but I am also an anthologist, just like my sister Sharon here. But I am also a trauma coach and a social and behavioral scientist.
Yes.
And so what that means is I study human behavior. I am also the founder of Gold Mine Thoughts Leadership Development Firm,
Okay.
which coaches and trains in corporations and individuals how to lead from a trauma-informed lens.
Yes.
And I came about that after going through a traumatic experience myself with losing my only nephew and having to try to return back to work after such a traumatic experience, and recognizing that people are not that receptive when you're coming back from a trauma. And you're trying to learn how to balance and your emotions with still doing your work, still processing everything that you go through,
Yes.
and trying to understand, like, how do I keep a balance where I'm not how I'm not lashing out at others,
Yes.
but I'm still in the space of doing the work. And so for me it was watching not only myself, like having these out of body experiences where I see teachers and leaders complaining about minute things, and here I am grieving tremendously, and still trying to show up, but not being enough for everyone else. And so for me, it was about, okay, what does this look like to train individuals how to welcome someone back without the assumption of, oh, you were gone for 3 or 4, or for 3 or 4 weeks you must have been on a vacation. When you're coming back from a loss, you don't want to hear like, oh, I hope you had a great vacation. I was not on vacation.
Yes.
I didn't lose weight. Because I was dying. I lost weight because I was hurting.
Yes.
So what does it look like to train people to be receptive to people who are going through traumatic experiences? And that could be grieving a loved one, that could be grieving yourself, that could be grieving a relationship, a changing job. It's so many different avenues. And so I created the From Trauma to Triumph model.
Yes.
Which is all about learning those steps of how to grieve and show up as who you're meant to be, not the expectations of other people. I am also a co-founder of the Melquan Anderson Foundation, which is my non-for-profit organization where we give back to the community by providing resources, educational resources, economic resources, employment opportunities, as well as taking care of our homebound community neighbors as well as our elderly neighbors. And so what we do is we like 3 times out of the year we do grocery shopping for our seniors and for our homebound individuals, especially when the holidays come. We, especially when COVID happened, we had the COVID testing bus come out and get all the seniors in the neighborhood tested, so that they didn't have to try to make appointments and go out and do it all on their own.
Nice.
And we also provide workshop, OSHA training and drywall workshop to teenagers from the ages young adulthood from the ages of 17 to 27. And so when they finish our program, they not only have their OSHA training card, but they also have the ability to know how to put up a drywall. They know how to put up the scaffolding. And so they're ready to actually go into the workforce. And we help them with their resumes. We help them get signed up into appointment agencies. So it's like, not only do you have this skill, but now you have access to this resume. You have access to this database that's telling us jobs that's coming out, and we continue to check on them. We follow them for a good 3 years so we can make sure that they get some type of employment, whether it's temporary employment or long-term employment. We just keep up with them so that they know that we can just leave them behind.
Yes.
And then again, I'm also the founder of RDB, which is Reverend Dr. Bond Speaks. Because I'm a public speaker, and I go out and community activist, and I go out and I activate and mobilize individuals who are disabled like myself, but also survivors of domestic abuse and gun violence, so that their voices and their stories are heard, and is seeing past the hurt, but also seeing the healing process. And what does it look like to heal a community who has often been tossed to the wayside? What does it look like when that community comes together and say, not us? So that's me in
Woo.
a nutshell.
Wow. You all are amazing. And I was amazed talking to you guys earlier. Tell me how you guys all came together. So, what is the unifying force behind these powerhouse of men and women of purpose, of business, of faith? So, why don't you guys start with telling me about what brought you all together?
I guess it's the author's journey.
Yes, the author's journey, the
Author's
book.
journey.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the publisher is Ilona Washington,
Okay.
and some of us worked on book one, which was
Triumph in the
Triumph in the Trenches,
Let's hold this
Navigating
up.
Success for Black
Yes.
Professionals, and then volume two is well, it's called volume two.
Yes.
But the great thing is that it's turning out to be a trilogy, and this is the second book. So there's another one coming. So this is how we initially met.
Yes.
Although I actually met Carrie at a book signing
Yes.
that I attended in Maryland. Was that 2022?
Yes.
And afterwards, we all had lunch together, and then somehow we're all connected. And we ended up in the same book with the anthology.
But I think the book is really just indicative of a larger purpose.
Yes.
Because when we spend time together talking, we realize that we not only have many things in common, we realize that we've literally been put together to be as biblical as possible, to be put together for such a time
as this.
Because we began writing the Triumph series sort of before America began to evolve into its dire need of not just this book, but of us as a team.
Yes.
And I think the word that I often say that binds us together is trauma, but not in a negative sense.
Yes.
Right? So as I've said, we have not bonded by a weird interdependency. What we've bonded over is wellness, is the fact that the one theme that runs through all of us is that we are healed people or on a journey of healing.
Yes.
And we are extending healing to people on the outside. And we formulate a group. Lastly, I'm going to say the thing that struck me the most when we first got together and we were on that Zoom or that virtual interaction group that we had was that we were from different parts of the world.
Yes.
That we were not all from this nation, but we were from different parts of the world, different walks of life, and yet we all had experiences that were deeply connected. We understood trauma from the inside, where we had all, in our work experience, in our journey upward in our career, had experienced the things that we were writing about. So we were experts who had come together. And this is the thing that's most important, is that people on the outside of the African diaspora frequently like to tell us that it's all in our minds.
Yes.
But the greatest power of this group is our ability to say we are an army, letting you understand that this trauma does happen in the workplace.
Yes.
And that we have not only survived the trauma, but we thrive.
Yes.
And we are able as a body to tell you how to walk out of it and how to walk out of it well.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well said.
And it's so interesting because Dr. Carrie and I are both in the Courageous Pursuit of Authenticity book. That's right. Hold it up.
Yes. Hold it up. Yes.
And so that's what I spoke about that in my chapter in there, because I was saying how there becomes a time in the organization, the machine, right, where show up as your authentic self becomes a microaggression.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so they say, we want you to show up. Come show up, be your authentic self.
Yes.
Or they weaponize it and say, I don't think that you're being authentic with me right now. And so for me, and in my chapter, it's like, so what's going on? And so in my chapter, it was about my authenticity belongs to me.
Yes.
Now I will show up as my professional authentic self, and I will do my job, and I will do what's required of me. and I will get my paycheck. But my personal authenticity belongs to the people I love. It belongs to the people who have earned that right for me to share that with them. So everyone does not have or should not have access to your personal authenticity.
Yes.
That needs to be earned.
You're absolutely right. It's interesting when you share that. It makes me think of a meeting that I had in a former position where the senior vice president decided that they were going to rotate monthly meetings, and they were going to do it at our houses. Right?
No.
Wow.
Who comes up with that idea? Like, we're going to be at your house next week.
Because I want to see what you've got in the
Exactly.
And my response was, I'm not interested in that. I work with you guys, and the people who get invited to my house are people who we want at our house.
Yes.
You're not coming to my house and being my boss.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's something that we see a lot in the educational
But
system.
it is a microaggression.
Yeah.
It is a microaggression.
It's amazing.
It's part of the dehumanization as well.
Right.
I own you to the extent that I can tell you what part of your lives I need to be in and involved in.
Wow.
But I think what's wonderful that we all need to really give her the props. Ilona Washington, our amazing publisher,
Wow.
She had the forethought to bring us together.
Yes.
She keeps repeating to us this one statistic. She said about only 3% of all writers are Black.
Yeah.
And in her genius, she's brought together a team of Black writers. And we've
Yes.
come to the point where we're not saying the same things. We have different ways of conveying our experience and helping people to understand their own experience. But she is definitely the center of this, and she sort of leads from the side. She facilitates us. She says things like, what's your premise? What's your direction?
Yes.
What's the thread that's running through us? And then she sort of just leads us to write, and then she comes back. So there is this amazing genius that's happening. Her company is The Author's Journey.
Okay.
And as a group of authors, we are literally on this journey with her.
Wow.
Because I find that my portion in Courageous Pursuit of Authenticity, I wrote about how you just go. And physically for me, it showed up that I just needed to say no.
No.
Yes. No, and no.
Complete sentence.
And complete sentence.
Yes.
And I know in my lived experiences, which that is what we have, we may have a traditional PhD, but we also have lived experiences that have been discounted for so long.
Yes.
And this is a mechanism in which we can write about these lived experiences and share them with others.
Yes.
Because for so long, we're just a few generations from the only thing we had was oral history.
Yes.
Right.
Great point.
We just didn't have, we didn't have a whole bunch of time to write.
Yes.
For those who knew how to write.
Yes.
So now we're having not only the knowledge span to do it and the mechanisms and pathways, but we're doing it in a way that is accessible to other people that may not be accessible to, because there are people who will pick up a book and they really do not want to read an entire book.
Yes.
But with an anthology, you're getting her story.
Yes.
That may be enough for today. You're getting his story.
I love
that. May
that.
be enough for a day.
Yes.
So they're short stories and essays, but they're rich.
Yes.
And you're getting something from it. They're research-based, they're rich, and they have lived experiences.
Yes.
So we don't feel less than that. We're not. Now we are writing our own books, our solo books, but we don't feel less than by it being an anthology, because you're really getting more bang for your book. You're getting 8 or 9 or 10 people.
Wow. Great
and
point.
their experiences from all over the world.
Yes.
And how they have lived in multi-generational, how they lived throughout life.
Yes.
And you can do that, and that can be more fulfilling than sometimes getting, 200-300 pages
Yes.
from one point of view.
Yes. And just in our culture with the storytelling that is so prominent in the Black
Yes.
culture, this qualitative research of those rich lived experiences is so important because it's a thread that runs through our culture, right?
Absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And the other interesting thing I thought about while Dr. Carey was talking is that, a lot of us have worked in areas where we find ourselves being the only one there. Right?
Yes.
And so one of the great things about the anthology for me was hearing all the different stories from all the different vantage points, from all the different backgrounds and industries and pockets of labor in terms of where we all work. But the common thing is that we're all dealing with systemic racism.
Yes.
We're all dealing with microaggressions.
Yes.
And we're all dealing with barriers, some of which don't make sense.
Right.
Yes.
People just come into our space. Like in
Talk
the first
about
book,
it.
I talked about a guy who just decided he wanted my office.
Oh, wow.
And so,
Yes.
these crazy things happen. And then I remember being in another situation that the organization decided they wanted to do key man insurance, right?
Yeah.
And I pushed back on it because my position was if I'm a key man for the company, I'm a key man for the Woolfolk family as well, right?
Okay.
And so if you want to pay for life insurance and something happens to me,
Yes.
that's fine. But you don't get the 100% of the proceeds.
Yes.
You need to split 50% of it with the
Absolutely.
Woolfolk family.
Yes.
If
That's
you're
right.
not willing to do that, I'm out.
Yes.
No, that's right.
I was the only one in my group that didn't sign it.
Wow.
And my boss at the time made a comment when something else happened. He said, "Well, I know one guy here that's not going to be pushed around."
Exactly.
But those kinds of things, to me, it's like you were saying, people make a decision. They can come into your space,
Yes.
or they can make a business decision that's in their best interest,
Right.
and completely negate what's in it for you.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
It just doesn't make any sense.
I know.
I love that you stood out and you spoke up and led. You know what I mean? Because you never know, Philip, how many people you gave courage to.
Right.
Even if they didn't have courage in that moment at that meeting,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere along their life, what you did could have impacted them so much so that they had the courage the next time that came up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's that courageous pursuit of authenticity that we kind of talk about. Even though Philip, well, you weren't part of this.
No, I wasn't part of that.
But once again, an example of constantly getting feedback, which really wasn't feedback,
Yes.
in reviews, saying you need to be more approachable, or how you be so aggressive.
Yes, aggressive.
People will make you think something is really wrong with you, and I mean, you need to do some self-reflection.
Yes.
I have more self-reflective journals about myself, and I found myself, and this is what I kind of talk about, is I found myself in my early career just like transforming into something.
Yes.
And I was like, this is not who you are.
Yeah.
So when I speak about my authenticity, it was actually finding my real self and saying, no, I'm not being aggressive. Unfortunately for you, that's how you're receiving it.
Right.
Yes.
And I am approachable because I don't have some invisible force field around me. That I said, so I no longer will ascribe to the labels that you put there that are not quantitative.
Right.
Now, if you tell me that, X amount of my students aren't, doing their work, or X amount of my suspensions or expulsions are increasing, why is that? If you can quantify something, but they couldn't quantify it because all of those numbers were obsolete when it came to me and my students.
Oh, wow.
So now you have to just find some feedback.
Yes.
So now the feedback is about how colleagues feel.
Right.
Now I signed up to be a middle school teacher.
Yes, ma'am.
They already been to middle school. So it really, if you're not getting complaints from the students and their parents, well, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
So, those are the kind of things. And I'm in contact with students today. They're in their 30s. And I was like, you are not in middle school. Stop calling me.
I love this.
But, it's things like that if you don't stop and you don't have some foundational, in my case, it was a Christian foundation that I could pray about things and say, now, Lord, Now you said I'm supposed to do this. Okay. Now I was gonna do something else. Now these people are saying this.
Yes.
And then he had to get me up at 6:00 in the morning to go to church.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Bible study. And I was like, okay, because something, the math ain't math in the world. I don't know why I'm getting these kind of things on my, and then finally I just had to push back, kind of like Phyllis did, and say, how do you know I'm not approachable?
Right.
How many trials have we done? Is it like 8 out of 10 times?
Yes.
And that no one could come up with anything.
Yes.
So then, I pushed back. I said, well, we're not going to document that I'm not approachable. And we're not going to document that I'm angry.
Yes.
Because unless you have me on tape or something, or I voice that to you.
But your problem is you're not being a footstool.
Right. No, I wouldn't smile. I was like, well, where is that in the job?
Right.
I just,
I have things on my mind, and I'm not smiling. Why am I smiling?
Because
I'm smiling at my children. I'm dealing with adolescents. I'm trying to stay 2 steps ahead of them.
Yes.
Life is. Again, a big part of what we do is help people to create boundaries and still not just survive in their careers, but how to thrive and climb. Because one of the things we say to people is most of us are people who have lived the C-suite.
Yes,
that glass ceiling that people think is impossible to attain.
Yes.
And that some people think that once you attain it, you have to give up who you are,
I
or
love that.
you're so traumatized that you can't live afterwards.
Yes.
But that's not the case. And so you caused me to think about a story when I'd taken over in a commissionership spot. There is a woman who was used to acting out in meetings. And so she and her fellow actors began to be very rude, very aggressive, pushing all these accusations. And I recall, I looked around the room and I smiled. You were serious. I did a lot of smiling. And I stood up and I said, please let me know when you are ready to have a respectful meeting. I'll be in my office.
Yes.
And I removed myself, went to my office, and, one of them came over, of course, expecting me, are you all right? I said, I'm perfectly fine.
Yes.
But I am used to being respected, and one thing you will do is respect me.
Yes.
Right? I'm open to love. I'm open to hearing you, but you will respect me. And she said, well, you abandoned us in the meeting. I said, are you children?
Exactly.
Are you my children? Are you my children? Do you need therapy?
Right.
You abandoned us. No. What I did was set a boundary.
Yes.
And what I will do is return when we are ready to have a meeting.
Yes.
And they sent the woman in, she came in, I hear that I am to come in and speak to you. I said, I hear that I am your supervisor.
Yes.
And I hear
that
we are going to have a meeting.
Right.
And have a productive meeting. And let me tell you this. You can come in here, you can shut the door, you can F me up. I'm not afraid. You can say all you want to say. But when we go out there in the presence of all these people, you will.
Yes.
You will have a productive meeting with me. You will respect me.
Yes, ma'am.
Your snide microaggressions to yourself.
Yes.
So, but again, I just want to be clear that I talk to young people about when you are climbing the ladder, there are varying games that you play in climbing the ladder. You've got to understand what game is being played at that moment and play it well and play it better.
Yes.
So that when you get to a certain level, I do say to people, listen, up until a certain point in my career, I went to all the meetings, I worked late, I did all these things. And then came the day when I decided, I don't have to do that anymore. I will not. I will sit by my pool if I want to. I will have a pool if I want to, not have one if I don't want to. I will do what I want to do. But there are games to be played because unfortunately we are living in the dregs of colonialism.
Yes.
And colonialism forced us to create some games to advance.
Wow.
The black tax.
But we have to teach. We are in the business. What we are doing is teaching people how to not just play a game to the point of becoming traumatized in the experience.
Amen.
But how to play the professional game and still come out peaceful, happy,
Right.
live the life,
Oh, yeah.
like your
Don't
daughter
allow
said.
anybody to
Oh,
steal
yeah.
your joy.
Be
No,
empowered.
There we go.
absolutely.
And there you go. And so, by the way, you talked about research.
Yes.
Most of us in this project are also researchers by virtue of
Yes.
the fact that we're faculty.
Yes.
So, what is forced each of us to do is based on our chapters. We're also going out there talking to people. So I do a lot of circles myself
Yes.
that become
Good.
focus groups to collect data on,
Yes.
because what we are doing is not just saying to people, this is our lived experience, but we are collecting data on other people's lived
Yes.
experiences so that we can say, no, it's not true that we are imagining these things that are happening to us
Yes.
at work as Black and brown professionals. They really are
They're
happening.
happening.
And here are the results.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And they're
Absolutely.
happening in multiple environments.
In
Right.
multiple
In multiple
environments
spaces.
and industries.
Yes.
You know, it's interesting. Just hearing everybody chat, I keep having these funny stories that come to mind
Yes.
growing up and different things family members would say. And my dad once got terminated from his job because
Wow.
someone called him the N word.
Mm.
And they worked with they had these big like oil barrels that they can use some solution, whatever they did on the job.
Yeah.
And so he dumped the guy head first down into the solution.
Wow.
And so years later, I remember my dad saying, you know, if you asked him how he was doing, he would say, "Oh, I'm doing fine. You know, it's a great day when you can get through without killing somebody."
Oh, goodness.
You know, and so now that I'm in this space,
Yes.
it makes me wonder what other experiences had he had
Yes.
that I don't know about
Right.
that made him think, you know, it's a great day when you can get through without killing somebody.
Yes.
Right? You know, but it's all these different things that related to, you know, trauma and experiences sometimes that we hold in,
Yeah.
and then it eats away at us, and
Yeah.
it turns us into something that we may not have been had we had not had to deal with those experiences.